The A-Death Phenomenon, Iris Carver, from Death, Traffic, in Cyberspace, Making a Killing on the Net, from the CCRU Writings. Has death itself become a telecommodity? A dark tide of scare stories and morbid rumor increasingly suggests so. By the late 90s, leery psychedelic utopianism seems to have contracted to the nihilistic slogan, "Turn on to tune out," to cite a recent release by Cata Jungle outfit, Signal. This ain't sex and drugs and rock and roll no more. According to Doug Fruchley, spokesman for the Christian Coalition for Natural Mortality, quote, the so-called A-Death menace is an almost unimaginable desecration of divine and natural law. This craze is an abomination without parallel. It trades on its intrinsic lethality, and it's growing incredibly fast. No one can say it isn't dangerous. Something truly evil is happening to our youngsters. Something beyond 60s 666 sexuality. I've never been as frightened as I am now. End quote. The result is an entire jungle of positive zero fugues, thanatechnics, sarcolepsy, snuff stims, K-zombification, electro-vampirism, necronomics, cathelatronics, 9 million ways to die. A-Death is a hybrid product, involving convergences between at least 4 distinct lines of rapid technocultural transformation. A-Death combines micropause abuse, deliberately reverse biotechnensis, with immersion coma time aberrances, generating, modulating, and rescaling sentience holes, Sarkon lapses. Those are toned by synatives, artificial drugs, which add zone texture and splice into hyperstition trances as a cultural events. Social statistics indicate that the typical A-Death user is 15 years old. Following the most ominous threads of A-Death reportage takes you inexorably down into the digital underworld of the crypt, the dark twin of the net, where Gibsonian flatlining is rapidly transmuting from exotic fiction into pulp cult and mass transit system. You could describe it as a route to contemporary shamanism, suggests A-Death cultists of the cybergoth late abortion club. After all, AOL spells Loa backwards. Will we call ourselves post-vitalists? How long have the late abortionists been active on the A-Death scene? There are disturbing tales of K-Space zombie makers, sorcerers in the plane of virtual nightmare whose digital spine-biting centipedes yield the soft tox juice that opens the limbic gates. Crypt initiates confirm that its arterial access lowway is signposted main flatline under construction. Answers vary confusingly, from extravagance, roundabout 66 million years, through vagueness, some time, to mystic compression, since now. In some respects, accounts of the contemporary A-Death scene and its recent history prove remarkably consistent. In particular, the one name to turn up incessantly is that of Dr. Oscar Sarkon, biomechanician, techno-genius, and one of the most controversial figures in scientific history. Sarkon's polymathy is attested by the variety of fields to which he has centrally contributed, including transfinite analysis, neural nets, distributed computing, swarm robotics, xenopsychology, axis engineering, yet it was a resolutely sober ocumenist, rather than, for instance, Fruchley's excitable End Times, which dedicated the cover and major editorial of its March 98 issue to the question, Sarkon, Satan of Cyberspace. Sarkon has become emblematic of the ways in which technological dreams go bad. In the words of fellow Axis researcher and social thanatropist Dr. Zeke Burns, quote, what makes Sarkon's input into the A-Death thing so incomparable is that it crosses between all the key component technologies. The biotechnensis work is so outstanding that it tends to overshadow his equally path-breaking research in adjacent fields. The Sarkon formulae for non-metric pausation, for example, which provide the first rigorous basis for IC, immersion coma, control. The links between biotechnensis and IC weren't remotely anticipated before the Sarkon zip, which mathematically models biocontinuous assemblages. Finally, there are synatives, about which he is understandably evasive. even though he was theorizing artificial or digital neurotechnic pharmaceuticals in the mid-80s. The aggregate result of all this pioneering science, a generation of teenagers lost in schizotechnic death cults.